Thank you, Dr. Paredes. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to speak at this special session here. I'm going to be presenting some work that our lab, Dr. Gatlin's Fish Nutrition Lab, has done in collaboration with Dr. Jeff Tomberlin's entomology lab at A&M, looking at some performance of red drum fed black soldier fly larvae. Black soldier fly larvae meals produced on substrates with various seafood processing products. Just a brief introduction. I don't have a slide on red drum, but red drum, for those that are unaware, is a cyanid that's produced pretty heavily in Texas. It's a economically important species in Texas in terms of food fish production, as well as recreational stock enhancement. I know our State Department, Wildlife Conservation Department has just released its 1 billionth red drum fingerling into Texas Gulf waters last year, and that's a accumulation of the total program numbers. So really important species, euryhaline species in terms of Texas production. So briefly here, these two bullet points really necessitate the need for alternative feed ingredients to fish meal. We have a good problem, a good demand problem in aquaculture. That means the industry is growing in terms of fish meal usage and marine ingredient usage. However, we do have a supply problem as well. So finite supplies of fish meal and fish oil really necessitate the replacement of these ingredients. And to me, that allows us to have the fun job of finding these novel ingredients in the industry here. One ingredient that really needs no introduction, traditionally grown black soldier fly larvae meal, has really made a big splash in the industry. It comes with the stigma of that environmentally sustainable approach. They're rich in protein and lipid, albeit the lipid profile does need some work as is, and we'll get into that in the next slide. However, they're efficient growth on various organic substrates, and that plays directly into that bioconversion. So the substrate really plays an important role as to the nutritional profile of the insect. So that really gives us some free range to modulate that nutritional profile as we see fit, and gives us a little bit of wiggle room in terms of nutritional formulating and fish meal replacement there. So bioconversion, we can basically grow these bugs on pretty much anything. Really our limitation is not so much as the nutritional quality of the substrate, but the legality and the regulations of growing it on a specific substrate here in the U.S. Unfortunately, can't grow that on pure waste right now, and probably never will. I mentioned the unfavorable fatty acid profile. That's characterized by low levels of omega-3s, and that comes from a high saturated fatty acid level and some monounsaturated fatty acids predominantly. However, we've shown that this ingredient traditionally can be supplemented in the fish feed, or in aqua feeds, and replace fish meal at lower amounts. So really, the feasibility, the limitations in the feasibility doesn't come from a nutritional perspective or a formulation perspective. It comes from really the production line. Right now, being a more novel ingredient, the production cost is unfortunately a little bit higher, and that leads to some direct problems related to scalability, being a little bit higher production cost. Scalability, unfortunately, the ingredient can't hold that market share that other ingredients like plant protein can. So you have some issues related with reproduction or producing the meal and holding the market share and holding those silos in those feed mills. And then, of course, economic feasibility, a little bit more niche product right now, so it's a little bit higher to produce, and unfortunately that cost can be passed down to the end consumer. Seafood processing waste is one of those ingredients right now. It's really interesting. seafood processing waste. You can call it seafood processing or byproducts. But roughly 30% of fish biomass from global capture fisheries and aquaculture is wasted throughout the food supply chain. So if we can collect those and turn those into a more viable product, that can really see some benefits. Many seafood processing plants actually pay for this to be taken off of their sites, their facilities, and it's formulated or produced into a low quality fertilizer, low value fertilizer, I should say, not low quality, or landfills. And we really feel that this can be utilized in a better way and really make those nutrients more available and enhanced, so getting into more of an upcycling type situation paired with the black soldier fly. And this research really has three main components, so a lot of moving parts. I mentioned we collaborate with Dr. Jeff Tomberlin's lab, so really looking at this holistically. So component number one, their lab is producing these larvae grown on the different seafood processing byproducts, different substrates. We're then going to, we then determine the nutritional composition, both proximate-wise and getting into the amino acid and fatty acid profiles. And then component three, we're putting our money where our mouth is and really looking at this in a digestibility trial and comparative feeding trial. So looking at the applicability of these insects as well. So component number one, Dr. Carvalho has a poster on a lot of these components, on a lot of the component 1 and 2 that goes into the methodology. I'm going to skim over this for time's sake, but basically component number 1, they do have established protocols. Whenever you see Gainesville diet, that is kind of the gold standard black soldier fly diet on the market right now. It's actually a housefly diet, so arguably there is room for some black soldier fly specific formulations out there, but that shows some relatively good growth of these insects. And then we're going to mix, we processed seafood processing waste, processed it further, ground it up, made a substrate out of it, and mixed those substrates with the Gainesville substrate in ratio. So 75-25 of the seafood processing waste with the Gainesville is what we landed on. And then we further harvested the black soldier fly, prepared those into a feed ingredient that we can incorporate in our diets. So Dr. Tomberlin's lab is working on the actual production values, the formal production values. However, I can report here that we did see 50 to 80% higher production output on the tuna and the redfish grown black soldier fly. So not only are they growing faster, they're growing bigger. So that can really hold some really good insight into the production sides of the insects. I know I mentioned some of the limitations there, but I feel that can really hold some good value there. The salmon seafood processing waste had a really high oil content. I'll show that here in a little bit, but that really constrained the growth of the insects. It created a film, and they actually couldn't move within that substrate. So those got nixed out pretty quickly when in terms of the growth trial, because they didn't grow. They couldn't move, they didn't grow, they ended up dying. Component number 2, the nutritional composition. So these were measured using various different methodologies, starting with kind of the 10,000 foot view and going to go into more of the amino acid and fatty acid ratios. As the literature suggests, we were able to modulate our nutritional profile using those different substrates. So Gainesville substrate had the highest protein, the lowest lipid. Again, that's that commercially available diet for those black soldier fly. With the tuna falling closely behind that, we decreased protein, increased lipid, and then red drum and salmon were our highest, or lowest crude protein and highest lipid there. So that's kind of the general trend. We were replacing protein in these insects with a little bit higher lipid content and decreasing that ash content. This graph right here is one of the coolest parts in my mind of this trial here, where we actually were able to modulate the omega-3 content of the black soldier fly insects, going from total omega-3s of around, a little less than 1 in the Gainesville diet, all the way to our tuna black soldier fly. These are larvae, fatty acid profiles, all the way to a combination of around 7% DHA, EPA, and linolenic acid in those black soldier fly, which is incredible to me. That opens the door to some defatting options and marketing of that product down the road. So I know defatting really wasn't very sought after because of that high saturated fatty acid content. It's not really a high quality fat. This opens the door, begins to open the door, in my mind, to some of those marketing options down the road. Amino acid profile, the tuna larvae were around 6-7% less in protein. However, most of the amino acids were comparable, if not greater, in those traditionally essential amino acids. So tuna larvae really mirrored that high quality protein profile of the Gainesville larvae. Red drum was 15% less, so obviously we're going to have some decreases in those amino acids, and then salmon behind that. Component number 3, this is that digestibility and comparative feeding trial here. I want to take the time here to reference that poster that I mentioned, poster number 246 in the poster session. If you haven't been there, please stop by. And this is really goes into depth on those components 1 and 2 in the digestibility trial. So I'm just going to present the results here of the digestibility trial. Keep in mind, we didn't have significance, but if you take this to a producer, a feed mill, a farmer, if you tell them that you have 20% difference in average protein digestibility with this ingredient compared to another, I think they'll be pretty much all ears on that. So we did have increased digestibility across the board on our fish processing waste grown black soldier fly, which was really interesting and really got us excited for this comparative feeding trial that we have here coming up. These are the diets. It's a lot. There were 8 different treatments. The main story here, we formulated on a on a digestible protein basis, and we replaced fish meal. So set replacement levels of fish meal. We used soybean meal because of the digestible protein. There's differences in our replacement levels of the black soldier fly ingredients. So that soybean meal and soy protein concentrate served as that protein balance there. Replace different levels of our black soldier fly processing product, 50%, 75%, and then we were really intrigued with the tuna, so we went all the way up to 100%. And then notice here that the fish oil decreases. So not only are we replacing fish meal, we're replacing fish oil as well, and that's something kind of a secondary aspect of this trial that I think that it's important to keep in mind as well. So a completely randomized design in our traditional setup there at the ARTF. At those 8 different diets, we had 3 replicates statistically measured for one-way ANOVA, and then Tukey's for our means comparison if we had some differences. Sampling procedures, we had our production performance parameters, we had our condition indices, the approximate composition, plasma concentration, or plasma collection for concentration. And then looking at the data here, it was really interesting here. Compared to the control, the Gainesville, 50 and 75 really performed well, but when we got to our fish processing waste, supplemented or substrate black soldier fly, we had those decreases as you increase more, and we have some idea as to why. However, we're going to kind of hold on to those until we get some of the results in the nutritional composition of the diets back. What that looks like visually there, we have our Gainesville relatively similar, and when we look at our red drum and tuna, seafood processing, black soldier fly, we do see that decrease there. Body composition, relatively similar across the board. Are kind of replacing some of that ash with a higher lipid content, similar to what we saw in the actual substrates. And in conclusion, black soldier fly demonstrated efficient bioconversion of low value seafood processing waste products. We had 50 to 80% increased growth in the actual larvae. And then those resulting products did have some good digestibility. And then, you know, I don't want to say it as a negative. The comparative feeding trial was a negative. We were able to supplement 50% of fish meal using those seafood processing grown insects, and 30 to 40% of fish oil. And I think that's something that should be touted a little bit as well, based on our results here. And we have follow-up trials coming down the pipe. But with that, let's say thank you. We have a ton of different collaborators. For time's sake, I'm not able to say everybody here, but we appreciate the contributions of everybody involved. And with that, I will end the talk there and open for questions if we have time.
Good job. Questions?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so when I've done some work with black soldier fly, I always wonder about customer acceptance of fish that have been fed on insects. Do you think there would be any issue with that?
The question is customer acceptance on fish fed on insects. I would say that would probably be, they would appreciate that in my mind, replacing those marine ingredients that generally have lower customer acceptance with insects, especially with how consumer values are moving, being more environmentally sustainable focused. So I would say it would probably be a benefit in that regard.
So, and I just wonder about also, if you kind of look at the texture or other aspects of the flesh that result from
Yeah, the question is looking at follow-ups with the texture, the fillet texture, the flesh texture. We haven't done any kind of qualitative assessment of the actual fillet. That would be a good follow-up to go off of there. Dr. Gatton looks like he has something.
A follow-up trial that's about to take place where we're going to take the red run up to about pound in size, so we have an extended feeding period with some of these substituted black soldier fly larvae diets. So what we're going to be following up on that.
Any other questions?
Great talk. So
Okay.
what's the hypothesis for this decrease?
Yeah, the question is, what do we think is causing the decrease in the comparative feeding trial of those fish processing waste ingredients, or fish processing waste substrate black soldier fly? You know, there's several different things. The first one, kind of the most obvious, is our digestibility values of the ingredients were off. So that could be a follow-up, something that we need to go back and look at. The other one being that in the diets, you know, replacing too much fish oil. That could be the other follow-up there. We're replacing you know, replacing in the tuna 100%, you know, replacing upwards of 60% of the fish oil. So it could be limitations in omega-3 content, available omega-3 in the diet. But again, I said that, you know, as I said, we're going to hold off on judgment until we get those fatty acid results back. So kind of two different avenues that we're thinking and can explore after that.
Any other question? I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Do you think that including this black soldier fly into the feed and feed is changing its palatability or its acceptance?
That's a great question. We didn't see any decreases in feed consumption. That, you know, that we observed throughout the trial. So I really, you know, I don't think so. But, you know, increased chitin always has that, you know.
But it's a great dome. Welcome.
Yeah.
One question, but the inclusion levels of the insect meal, they are rather high. I mean, based on other studies, if you compare that with other studies, I mean, you have these anti-nutritional effects, you know, which can probably also explain the decrease in growth.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, increased chitin levels, you know, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. In moderate levels, yeah. That's a good point there. So you know, we have lots of different avenues to explore as to why we saw that. You know, we really didn't expect that based on the digestibility values, the amino acid profile. It should perform, you know, really, really well compared to even our internal reference of the Gainesville diet. So that's a good point.
Oh, it's a good job. Congrats.
All right. Thank you.